again. Let's wait for our guests, Stephen, Gouveia, and Michael. I have to confess that I have difficulty in pronouncing your name, Michael.
You can call me Misha.
Misha? Okay, I will call you Misha then.
It's very funny. My real name is Mykhaylo, but people from the West generally have easier time pronouncing Michael, which is why I'm usually Michael.
Okay.
But you're from Eastern Europe, right?
We are from Romania, Bucharest.
Yeah. So that's why. So that's why it's easier for you to say Misha.
No, it's easy. Yeah, it's easy to say Misha.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Unless it will remind us about some neighbor that we are struggling with together as nations. Good. We are going to start right now a discussion about a discussion panel about how AI will influence neuroscience. I can say that the subject is very hot because neuroscience, it's the new kid, the new kid with nice genes. It's if you want the great results and great answers that came in the last 10 to 15 years came from neuroscience regarding brain, regarding psychic mechanisms. So yeah, from this point of view, neuroscience is something that we can rely on. Another important question is AI going to help neuroscience become more and more precise, becoming, if you want, the major, let's say, a part of medicine? Because I do think that medicine will also be modified by results from neuroscience. So is neuroscience right now influenced by artificial intelligence? Is artificial intelligence the next engine for neuroscience? I will let Stephen respond to that.
Mm-hmm. That's a very big question, right? So I will try to just make a few comments. So at least from a philosophical point of view, I think it's very interesting because both neuroscience and AI are very driven by data, right? By empiria, by the empirical world. But regarding theories, we have too many theories for describing the same phenomenon. So my expertise is related with consciousness. I work a lot on consciousness from a theoretical point of view, and if you check how many theories of consciousness there is available, you will be laughing because we have literally dozens and dozens of theories of consciousness. And if that's the case, and let me add that all these theories, they are based with solid empirical data from neuroscience. So this is an awkward situation to be on, right? Because we have very solid, at least some people claim it's a very solid discipline, neuroscience, but we have so many different kind of theories of consciousness. Something must be wrong here. And I actually think that's the problem with neuroscience currently. It's very rich in empirical data, but it's very poor in theory, in theoretical principles that are solid and that are coherent between themselves. So that's my first comment. The second comment is to say that actually, remember when told you that AI was at least more developed kind of AI, is we can consider specific technologies to be a sort of black box, as I defined it previously. But actually, we can also say that the brain is literally a sort of black box, right? So it's very hard to study it. It's very hard to understand how the brain can correlate specific inputs from the environment and then create behavior, for example, or can create specific thoughts, etc. So, and this is where I think AI can be a promising venture to help neuroscience to solve problem of the conscious brain. But it's interesting to say that we know that because we don't know what the brain is, how it operates, how it functions, how it creates consciousness, we as a society, we always used the latest technology to sort of create a theory about consciousness. So in the first years when we developed trains, we said that the brain worked like a train road station, right? A network of trains. After the comparison was the electricity station, right? So the brain works like an electricity station. And now the current comparison model is the AI developed, the AI, machine learning, deep learning. And we claim that the brain works like an AI. And this, I think, is interesting because basically, when we are doing these claims, I don't think we really know what we are saying. We are just trying to, it's like we are in an open sea without any land, and we are trying to secure specific places where we can put our chip on, but actually we are just going in open sea, and I'm not sure we are finding solid land to be able to build something. So this will be my first comment. Of course, neuroscience it's hard to say that there is such a thing as a neuroscience, right? As a very solid and Korean discipline, because in neuroscience we have many different methods that are very different from each other. Think about, for example, EEG, right? EEG is very useful to measure temporal activity, but it's not useful for spatial resolution. Think about fMRI, which is quite the opposite, right? It's very useful for spatial resolution, but it's not helpful for temporal. We, of course, we can try to combine these tools to create a more solid view about functions of the brain, etc. But I think my point is that at this moment we should be more humble that people usually are, and we should at least claim that things are more difficult than we usually claim they are. And I think there is a sociological reasons for that. A lot of people from neuroscience, from AI, they need fund to do their research. So usually because we have this capitalistic structure in science, people usually needs to overestimate their research to be able to have funds and to be able to do the research. So we also have this very sociological aspect that I think is interesting. If you see, for example, the Blue Brain Project, no, the one that was European, right? There were millions of euros, and actually we don't have a genome of the human brain, and everyone thought that at this time we already had that because we had so many teams, so many millions of dollars and euros that were invested in that. We are not in a much different position that we were 10 years ago. So I think this is, I think these are my first comments, and we can debate on that and other issues if you want.
Okay, the same question for Misha.
Actually, well, since I'm an applied sciences person, I have an applied master's degree and stuff. I am more probably as a, scientifically more interested in applied approaches, and something I see probably happening not only in neuroscience, but mostly in neuroscience in the future is reverse analysis of data. So what does this mean? you probably know that in AI, data is the name of the game. The more data you have, the better your model, and generally AI tends to represent data set really closely. But what it means for us is we can use it to understand the opposite. We can use the AI to understand our data better than we ever could. So here's an example. It's very simple, but I will explain it in a moment. So just to clarify, through Eisenhower was in 91. What in here, right? We have a question: who was the president of the United States in 1951? And we have an answer: Harry Truman. But what's interesting is we see that it thinks it might also be Eisenhower, even though it's still only 1951. 1952. And now it says it is Eisenhower. But what's interesting for us is these possibilities. What we see is different names and different presidents appearing in the possibilities. What we see in here is the thought process of our AI based on the data that we have. So in here, in this example, it's very simple. We have data from 1950 to 1960 about the presidents, and it comes up a lot. So AI understands that it's a president from that time period, and it tries to guess it the best way it can. But what it could be used interestingly and specifically for neuroscience is in fields where we don't really know what's going on. Like in the brain, we have a general idea of what's going on. But when you have complex procedures, like, I don't know, playing chess, and you see all these parts of the brain light up, there is still a lot of mystery left in it, right?
We don't know yet everything on functionality of the brain and why some of them are, as you say, lighting up, or others. And yeah, there is.
So what AI can do in this case is provide a bit of insight into the structure of the data. So there is a bit of research going on it right now, but I believe too little. I believe there should be more. So what you give to AI is you give brain lighting up, and you ask it to predict the task. And so you say, this lights up, this lights up, this lights up, this does not light up. This is not operational right now. And it says, well, this person is probably looking at an apple, or playing chess, or listening to music. I don't know. The point is, then you go to the picture of the brain, and you change a bit of what has lit up, and you see how has the prediction of the AI changed. So what AI predicts changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you an insight into data. It shows you that AI has seen. So let's say a part of brain lights up, and AI says the person is playing chess. You cut off some part of the brain, and it still says person is playing chess. But now you cut off this part of the brain, and the person says this person is eating an apple. And you're like, aha, this must mean that this part of the brain relates to something that requires playing chess, but not physical activity, for example. Does this make sense? Because it is very complicated, but the whole point, this is a newly emerging field of AI science, where you don't actually use AI to make predictions, but instead use AI to analyze complex data that is very hard to make sense of. Because what AI does is AI looks for connections, for correlations. And since some AI models have billions and billions of parameters, they look for billions of correlations, way more than a normal person can find by just looking at the picture. And then it allows you to reverse engineer the thought process of AI.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I mean, we already know, and that's a fact, that the next generation of antibiotics is clearly IE business. So we already know that they discovered the next generation of antibiotics that they are testing right now with artificial intelligence, because the volume of the data is so big that no human mind can make inferences on that. Please.
Yes, but this is just a segue to for the uninitiated crowd. What they did is actually generally not prediction, but inference. So exactly what I was talking about. They tried to predict the new antibiotic, but instead of just making this drug, they instead looked into the thought process of AI to gain further insight. And I believe this is, first of all, very cool. But second of all, I believe this is where the next gen of neuroscience also lies. The inference into the complex elements of the brain.
Right.
Steven?
Yeah, so I have a few questions. So first of all, it's interesting because computers can play better chess than humans. But it's also interesting that better than just a computer, human plus computer is more accurate than just computer. So this means that, of course, data are interesting, but I think the human brain gives you a perspective that just AI cannot give you, and I think that's important to tell. Another problem is that I don't think this, for example, the same stimulus can create the same neural activation in the brain. Why? Because our brain is different, our body is different. For example, you can 20 years ago we didn't know about something that was very important, which is the default mode network. The default mode network is basically a kind of network that is running on without any stimuli from the environment. So each of us have a threshold of the default mode network, and this can be different from person to person. And actually, a normal brain has a specific default mode network that is different from a sort of abnormal brain, such as a schizophrenic, for example. And if you put the same stimulus to a normal brain versus a normal brain, the areas that will be activated will be different because the default mode network is different already. So the threshold is different, then the process of the stimulation is different. And therefore, I think one of the consequences of how you described the process would be to create this sort of one-to-one theory of mind-brain processes, right? So we have this mind process, and this is, and it's interesting because you use the concept correlation, right? But one of the first principles that we learn in neuroscience and in philosophy is that correlation is not causation, right? And you can have millions of correlations. This will not mean that there is something useful or biologically relevant to associate mind and brain, right? So I think we still have a lot of work to do. I actually think that AI can be helpful to guide at least some of that work. And it was interesting that you talk about inference and prediction. Actually, that there are some neuroscientists today, and I can show you one of. So this is one of the books I edited. It's called The Predictive Processing, or The Philosophy and Science of Predictive Processing. And this is basically a new theory of the brain. And this theory argues that instead of the brain working like a traditional model that, okay, we have a brain here and we have the environment that gives you stimulus to the brain, and then the brain process that stimulus. What happens is actually the opposite. The brain first creates a model of reality that it tries to predict, and it then goes to the environment to confirm if that model is accurate or not. And this is interesting because it it's a sort of biological principle that every part of our body and our brain is trying to predict its next level of activity. And this is a lot of what AI does also, right? So, and AI, a deep learning, for example, what he's trying to do is always to predict and to predict and to predict until it's solid enough. So I think we can use both neuroscience and AI to do research on the brain and on the mind, but we should always have this methodological caveat or this skeptical philosophical view that we are using this as a tool, but not as an end, right? So this will not give you a clear theory solid enough to be used. And this is interesting because this seems to be just theoretical, but actually in psychiatry, you see that the problem of the brain is real, right? We don't have a good theory of schizophrenia to treat all the symptoms. We can treat one symptom, but we cannot treat them all at the same time. It's very hard, it's very complex, and I think mental disease are a good way of showing how neuroscience is far from the truth, right? So it's far from unveiling all the problems. I'm not saying that we should not do research and we should not, but I'm saying we should be careful with the statements we usually do about the power, about what we know about the nature of the brain and etc.
Yeah, and this is why actually the best example, I love it, about chess, where the machine is good, but the machine and the person is way better. So what's going on there is the game is very complex and is nowhere near as complex as brain is. But AI's analysis itself is not good enough. If machine plays alone, it is not as good as it would be if it were to play with a human. So the reason is the human doesn't use the machine's predictions. Human uses machine inference. What? Forgive me. It uses the human uses inference of the machine. So it says, okay, so you suggest this move. Why? And the machine goes, well, I think it's going to be like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. And human says, no, I actually think this will be better according to the understanding he gained from the machine's thought process. So what I'm saying is obviously, and I agree with you completely. You're very correct, and I love your example. Especially since neuroscience is way harder than chess is. We don't exactly have chess figured out, but we are very good at chess. We are not as a humanity, but we are not nearly as good at neuroscience. So what's going on there is your brain is infinitely more complicated than chess. But still, so when AI will suggest to you its understanding, a lot more of it will be nonsense than it would be when playing chess. But some of the ideas provided by AI, driven from its infinite, base of knowledge and understanding of correlations, will be actually of use. And it seems to me like this is the future.
Yeah, actually, I think chess is very interesting philosophically because the first considerations about the brain were made about chess. So chess was like the most mental phenomena that was seated during the 50s in AI because they thought that chess would be a good mental activity to be replicated in a machine. And it's interesting that one of the first persons that thought about chess, replicating chess in an artificial way, was Claude Shannon. And Claude Shannon, he wrote this influential paper about, well, where he described two artificial systems that could play good chess, better chess than any human. He talks about a first system that would be basically a very tactical, like a human way of playing chess. And then he talks about the second system, which was basically a very powerful tool that could examine millions of possibilities in seconds. And it's interesting that in the history of the development of chess machinery, the model that was followed was the second model and not the first one. So, for example, the current chess machine we have, they are really good at showing what is the best play in that specific circumstances, but they are not very good at long time or long run thinking. And for example, think about Kasparov when he played with Deep Blue in 1998. This was the second match because he had a first match before, 1 year before, and he actually won the first match. And in 1998, I think, he had the second match in New York where he basically lost one of the games because the computer did like a sacrifice of force of knight that nobody thought a machine could do. It was a very human play. And Kasparov even there is a lot of controversy about that specific game because Kasparov even claimed that that was not a play done by a machine, it was made by a human because no machine can have such a long-term capacity of doing such a sacrifice, because a sacrifice doesn't make sense if you consider just the millions of possibility for that specific play. If you put it into a machine, the machine will not say to play that game, that play. So it's interesting that even that the history of chess is very associated with the brain and how we can try to replicate mental activities and etc.
I would just add one more small thing. Oh, yes, sorry, you're not done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. So something interesting, specifically what you're talking mostly, all the machines which use the script, so the AI did not use neural networks and didn't use deep machine learning. So what's very interesting about new age AIs that use deep machine learning is they play completely differently. This is what's interesting. So I watched this video with Carl Magnus, the world chess champion, and he was watching one of the first games of the new deep learning AI chess machine, and he just watched it sacrifice its queen in the middle of the game for no obvious reason, and then win it completely, because what it did is it sacrificed the queen for winning the position, and then it just saw victory and it went for it. That's what that's something AIs would do, unlike humans, is while you have your personal previous experience, AI doesn't. And when you were learning to play chess, especially as a beginner, you were taught to never, to mind your queen, to never blunder. And you were taught basically that your pieces are very precious. This is something you were taught from the beginning, and it stays with you. Even if you're the world chess champion, if you beat the world chess champion at the age of 14, like Carl Magnus did, it doesn't help. The idea that you need to hold on to your pieces. And turns out that you can make amazing games and, well, the AI is the best player in the world. Be the best player in the world if you abandon something that holds on to you as fundamentally as keeping your queen. So this is one of the ways that AI can actually teach us, is it gives us a new perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting because Magnus Carlsen, he usually, when he is playing these more funny tournaments, he's trying always to do something new. So, because we know that a lot of, especially openings, right? They are very traditional. If you are an amateur player, you know at least 10 openings that are usually the same. So Magnus is always trying to do something that was never done before. And it's interesting because the machine, you can use the machine to evaluate the position, right? And when he does this, usually what happens is that the machine goes to white 1+, and then he goes to black 2+, and then he goes back. And he doesn't know how to evaluate that position because it's completely new. It was never played before in an official tournament. So that's interesting because although AI is very useful and it can be very strong, again, I think AI plus human is stronger because it can give you this long-term perspective about the game and not just what is the best play in this specific position.
So there is a nuance. The AI you're referring to is probably chess.com AI, right? So it's Stockfish. Stockfish, to my understanding, doesn't actually use deep learning. Although it's not important at the moment, it's just a bit of trivia. What is important, again, yes, I agree with you 100%. The future is not in AI prediction, as it might seem. The future is in AI inference, where AI suggests something and then human looks at it and goes, this part makes sense, or goes, none of this makes sense, and we are going to try again. At least that's what seems to me.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you a little bit. We have a comment, and thank you, Misha, for this great comment, because it applies to this, and I will tell you why. I will just read the comment, and then I will leave you both to respond, and I will comment also. It has already been, this is the comment, it has already been 10 years that neuroscientists use machine learning to probabilistically infer cognitive function from bold signal data. It is almost the past, not the future, since it is not possible to regressing it to neuronal nor system networks level. So this is the comment, Misha.
Yes. So I know the concept is a bit complicated, and it's not your fault. Basically, nobody understands it. I have some experience with it because I had to, I had to invent a couple of things for our company to actually make it work. But the whole point is you do not use predictions to infer anything. You use the model's thought process. What does the model actually do? The model doesn't actually tell you that the person is eating an apple. The model tells you my certainty that the person is eating an apple is, let's say, 30%. So then you change something and you watch this certainty change. So you watch basically you are able to infer the correlations that this multi-billion parameter model sees. This is what's going on. And so you change something and you see it change barely, like 1%. And you go, well, that's probably not important. That's probably, noise. But then you find a bit and you change it a lot. And then you find out that it jumped by 20%. And you're like, aha. So AI has seen this part of the brain light up a lot in this specific case, where a brain looks like this, and the other bits that light up look like this. Then this AI has seen this part of brain light up a lot if a person eats an apple, to the point where it has become essential to the prediction. This has to mean something then. What does it mean? It's a question to you, not to me. But the point is, you are not actually using the system of prediction to predict whether a person eats an apple, but you use this system to see its thought process, to analyze what it is thinking, what does it have on its mind, right? And that would be your key to the most unexpected correlations. At least that's an idea.
So if I may, if I may add something to this, the way that I'm interpreting the comment, and also my personal opinion, I think perhaps the challenge with this is that brain functions are not localized to such specific areas. So, for example, you don't have, let's say, a voxel or a few voxels in the brain that would light up when you're eating an apple, and then a couple others, or like, I don't know, 2 of the initial 3 ones, and then another one that lights up when you're playing chess. So I think, at least with the current resolution that we have for acquiring the data, it would not necessarily be possible to kind of draw this kind of inference, even with the help of AI. So AI would definitely help us in kind of making sense of the data, and it could work in the way that you're describing it. It's just that we don't have the resolution to map the neuronal circuits that might be responsible for this.
Oh, an apple is obviously an oversimplification. I agree. I didn't mean to offend your art. The apple is obviously an oversimplification. It's just a way to explain the concept that you can remove some small bit and see how much it changes AI's opinion, and that would lead you to understand, to granting some insight into correlation. It's again, correlation does not mean causation, but correlation is better than nothing in science usually.
I will make the comment. Why do I think it is the future, and why do I'm not rejecting, but I'm just making a comment to your comment. And I will say that your comment is specifically orientated towards neuroimaging. And yes, it is important. Neuroimaging has a big word to say, and it will say more in the future, knowing that the next generation of imaging machines are just coming in the next 3 or 4, 5 years, let's say. So I think that it is possible, it is still possible to be the future, because yeah, we don't know so much. And also Christiana's comment is it's very important, because right now the resolution does not permit us to make any other inferences right now. But there is another point of view that we should take into consideration, and this is another question that I want to ask you. Right now we have inferences on neurobiology. Let's say we don't have so much, but what we have right now, we have IE working on neurobiology, or we have IE working on neuroimaging, and so on. What we don't have still is holistic IE, and in neuroscience. I mean, this is the most important thing that I want to say. An IE machine that will look on the complexity of neuroscience and neurobiology and neuroimaging, and that will put all the data together. I think this is why I'm just questioning the statement that our guest made, because until then, and not until then, but not even then, I don't think we can say it is the path. So we are making baby steps, and that's clear. Yes, there are some research made in the last 2 or 3 years that are saying a lot of things. Still, they are not replicated. Still, we can still have major changes in the future, only due to changing the resolution of neuroimaging. So this is why I'm not definitive in saying it is the past or almost the past. How do you see that, Misha?
Which part? There were a lot of.
Sorry, about this holistic integration of artificial intelligence machines.
Here's the problem. I'm gonna say it again, and I want everybody to say it with me, even if your microphone is off. Data is the name of the game.
Yes.
And the problem with holistic data generally in research is that people who have it don't want to give it, and most people don't have it. And when I say people who have it, I mean you need terabytes of data, preferably, at least if you want to make something that is as good as GPT-3, right? Probably you don't need as much to start, but you need a lot of data. And the reason is, as our previous speaker suggested, that brains are very different and they react differently, and all of it is very complicated. So the correlations are not easily found. It's not some, text that just, makes sense and usually is repeated over and over again. But even then, when we want, it seems at least, right, the task of text generation is pretty simple. Even the youngest kids, since, I don't know, 3 years old, can probably speak no issue, right? So they can generate text. And you don't really need to have some special skills or anything of that sort. And even then, the task of text generation turned out to be really complex in terms of data. Turns out you need a lot of data even for something as simple as that. But figuring out some holistic system seems difficult. What might be a solution is some researchers, probably from some Harvard or whatever, generate a one-size-fits-all model that uses their limited data, the huge but limited data. Then you can use it to fine-tune it for your tasks. That's the only way I see it working. So basically, the pit stop in here, the blockage, the dead end, is not the technology, it's the data, which is really, really difficult to get.
Stephen?
Yeah, a couple of comments. So first of all, it's interesting that even with neuroimaging, a lot of people think that we actually measure neural activity, but we don't even measure that, right? So what we do, it's very indirect. We just measure oxygenation of neuron, and then we induce or we inference the kind of electrical activity in that specific part. But this is very indirect. And even if you take, for example, fMRI, when someone is doing fMRI, there is so many noise from the background from the machine, right? It's a very uncomfortable position. There is a lot of neural activity that is very hard to ignore in the analysis you do. So a lot of the analysis we do are very artificial. They are not related with actual neural activity because of this. And of course, this is a methodological problem that we need to solve. And I think the way to solve this will be better technology in the future. So my first comment is that we need to develop better technology to study the brain. The second comment is that actually there is here a very philosophical assumption in neuroscience, which is basically this idea of localization versus something else, globalization, for example. And this comes from a very particular philosophical theory, right? So remember René Descartes, the French philosopher, he actually thought that mental activity were produced from an immaterial soul through the brain via a specific anatomical part of the brain, which is called the pineal gland. I'm not sure how to pronounce it in French. But basically, it's interesting because neuroscience, although denies the dualism of substance that Descartes argued for, right? So Descartes argued that the world was divided into immaterial and material worlds. And we human, we had the soul, which was immaterial, and then we had the body, which was material. So current neuroscience, we deny completely dualism. We are all materialistic now. But it's interesting because the philosophical structure is exactly the same. We are just trying to see which part of the brain is the pineal gland instead of the pineal gland. And this can be a huge mistake because we are looking for localization where, or maybe mental activity and the mind is not localized. It's global, it's dynamical, and it depends of many relationships between specific parts of your brain. And imagine the same stimuli can be processed by your own brain differently today, tomorrow, and yesterday. And it can also depend of the kind of embodiment that you have, and of course the kind of environmental relationship you have with your body versus via your brain. So my comment is that we need to think a neuroscience that is more global, it's more dynamical than we have now. And actually, there are some neuroscientists who are trying to develop tools, specific tools, where phenomenological descriptions of consciousness can be, or subjectivity in general, can be used as an heuristic tool to guide the empirical neuroscience. So just a few examples. This specific methodology, it's called neurophenomenology, which was created by a specific philosopher and cognitive scientist, Gouveia Ph.D. And a few authors that are trying to do this right now are Evan Thompson, Alvin Noah. Some people say Antonio Damasio is, for example, a Portuguese neuroscientist, is a sort of researcher that tries to do this kind of work, that tries to basically correlate the first-person perspective, the subjectivity, with the third-person perspective. Because a lot of neuroscientists also have this very eliminativist or reductivist approach to the mind, right? So they just claim that consciousness is, maybe it doesn't exist, it's just a conceptual mistake that our theory doesn't need to explain. But I actually think that we need to explain consciousness not by just removing it from our conceptual theories, but actually to try to have a more solid, a more dynamical and global theory of neuroscience.
We have.
If I may, just a split second. So what's interesting here, I generally agree, and with the fact that, again, the concept of the brain photograph was just a simplification example. It would have been very difficult if I were to go in depth. Yeah, but something that came up, a good example again of what you can actually beat using AI is noise. Noise is a huge problem generally when you take samples, and turns out AI is actually very good at fighting noise. So some of these examples, for example, here, this koala is actually unrecognizable for the human eye, but AI is able to identify it because AI learns to fight noise. So if you were to sit there and like actual neuroscientists right now study for years what is noise and what isn't noise, then you will probably be able to see koala in there too. Like when you look closely, you probably notice a koala, right? In here it goes. But for AI, it's surprisingly easy because noise is very systematical. And while it's not a perfect solution, this is one of the places where actually AI would shine. Just a side note.
No, it's not a side note. Actually, it's the next topic of discussion because that's, I don't know how did you do it, but yeah, you inferred correctly. But yeah, until then, just a reaction of our attendee. My apologies. My comment wanted to address that what the speaker is saying has already been done in 2004 and on, and also still lack of usable estimation measures, but the later part is less important. For example, for fMRI, which is one of the few in vivo measurements per human, there is Miyawaki and all 2008 study. Yeah, there is also, because I was checking this. There is also some other study that is actually more recent from 2020, reconstructing lost ball signal in individual participant using deep machine learning. They recreated part of the activation, and still by removing a part of the fMRI result, a machine learning with the data from let's say the first part succeeded to infer the results of the end, and it was pretty impressive. Yes, true. Still, this is another issue that refers to the answer that we gave before. Right now we get to the point of because we are talking about neuroscience, and we are going to talk also about the fact that image reconstruction and image recognition, it's a very, very important part of neuroscience, mostly because And I will refer here also, I will refer mostly to imagistic studies and mostly to the clinical part of neuroscience. If we refer to, let's say, to the analysis of a brain of a person that suffer, let's say, from mild cognitive impairment, still not Alzheimer, but let's say mild cognitive impairment phase. You think it's possible to do it right now with the method of AI? Can we infer, let's say, can we put a diagnostic, a short diagnostic right now just by analyzing an image with artificial intelligence?
The correct question should be, can a human, an average educated human do that? And how hard would it be?
For an average educated human to see if that...
Well, an average doctor, right? All they have is this image. How hard will it be for them?
It will be harder if that person is not working on head imagistic part of their of radiology, let's say. It will be very, very hard. It will be very hard because you need very experienced radiologists to make a difference.
So it's a question of experience, is what you're saying?
Yes, mostly.
Then it is probably automatable.
So this is your answer.
It will depend, of course, on on nuances. Yeah, I have a general understanding of neurobiology, but obviously you know way better than I do, and especially the medicine part, which is why I'm asking you. I'm very used to this. I work with psychologists for living. So my usual question when I usually respond to this question with a question: can we predict this? The answer is, what do you need to predict this? Is most of what you need experience? Then if the answer is yes, so you need general understanding and experience, right? If most of what you need is experience, then probably you can. The question again is data.
Right. Well, can I do
Yes.
a quick comment?
Please.
Yeah. So as Florian said in the beginning, I gave a course on consciousness with Roger Penrose, and actually Penrose, he has a very specific argument. Well, basically, he claims that the Gödel's theorem shows that mathematical understanding cannot be computable, and if cannot be, and he shows that mathematical understanding is part of subjectivity, and therefore he claims that consciousness and subjectivity cannot be computable in that sense, experience in general. So I'm curious to know how can you defeat this argument, because Gödel's theorem is very, I think it's a very specific caveat for all the general AI project that wants to replicate every part of the world, even the subjective world that we human, right? So I'm curious too, because he's a physicist, right? So he knows his math and...
Yeah, no, this is correct. It is generally believed that the consciousness is not computable. It's debated, but generally it is believed. So what we do is we don't make a consciousness. We pretend like we have one. My favorite example, although it has backfired more than one time, I'll get back to it. My favorite example is a self-driving car. A self-driving car, well, it doesn't actually know anything about the outside world. It just has its image recognition. So when it sees a pedestrian, it drives around it. It doesn't hit the pedestrian, but it doesn't know what a pedestrian is at all. So, for example, the system that will be diagnosing person based on the brain doesn't know what a brain is, but it does know what a diagnosis looks like. That's the general idea. So it doesn't know what a brain is in the same way that we know. Like it doesn't know that it's inside the human and there are some connections and whatever. it just knows what it looks like, and it pretends like like it's a doctor, and it just it attempts to emulate the thinking pattern of a doctor without needing the outside world for it. That's the general idea.
Mm-hmm.
So while you can't compute consciousness, at least it's generally believed that you can't, you can pretend like you're conscious, and you can do
Right.
it pretty well. I mean, you can confuse some Google engineers with that, you know.
Right.
Okay, I will make. There are some comments about what we discussed until now. Marin Peters, it's saying artificial intelligence can actually be applied to infer functioning of the brain. One famous study investigating how the hippocampus store memory in epilepsy neurosurgery patient. The researcher used rods to measure the electrical current when the participants were memorizing words presented to them. Solely on human power, the researchers were able to infer which specific region within the hippocampus were involved, but they could not determine what combination of neural activity would predict correct memorization versus fault memorization versus no memorization. In the follow-up study, they hooked their custom algorithm up to the measurement rods. The algorithm was able to recognize the particular neural activity patterns and timing that characterize correct memorization versus incorrect memorization versus no memorization. On top of this, the researcher reversed the polarity of the electrical rods algorithm. Via the algorithm, the researcher were now able to stimulate the hippocampus in the participant to enhance or block the memory formation on the demand of the researchers. Their study provided novel insights into the functioning of the brain. It is also a clear example of human-machine cooperation on multiple levels, and it is a case of machine inference in neurology. I didn't know about it. Yes, I will check it out after the conference, and Marin, I will come back with, because I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence, that's for sure. What I did is to participate at some courses that analyzed, because this is what I wanted to tell you. Yes, there is possible to see if a patient has MCI or has Alzheimer. Alzheimer, it's pretty much easy to analyze, to use a machine learning to analyze or artificial intelligence to analyze if the patient has Alzheimer or not. But the problem is still because we are going back to the principles. We are going back to what Stephen said in his first talk. What are we going to do if the percentage of success is, let's say, 85% or 82%? It is enough? It is not enough? It is okay to let a patient go knowing that it might have Alzheimer or not? Because as you can see, this is not a question of localization. Let's say I have a problem with analyzing hippocampus, and if the hippocampus is shrink in MRI study, let's say that it's for sure minimum MCI and it might be Alzheimer. It's more than that. There are multiple things that you can analyze. And when I was talking about holistic integration, I was talking also on that, on having different pieces of information coming from different, let's say, sources. And in that moment, you can do something. In that moment, you can use artificial intelligence to infer things. But also, this artificial intelligence machine that I was referring to is functioning today. It's functioning in hospital in Switzerland. They are using it. They are trained. More probably, the term that I will use is to train the machine right now, because the problem is still the same. The problem is, am I am I doing it right? Do I have the right radiologist to analyze the data? Is my radiologist trained enough in that? Because if he's doing only Alzheimer, then probably he can do it without any, he's having an experience of 10 years. But if I'm not having a good radiologist to look into the data that machine learning provided, then I have a problem, because at 82 or 85 percentage of success, then we have a problem. And maybe this is what you said in the first place with how we can change the model. And now maybe you can develop more on this model of how we can, because it's a question of morality at some point, how you can live with that decision.
It's actually something interesting. I've been asked this question a lot, but in relation to my company, because we do mental health support, and there is a chance that we will not be able to help somebody. And the chance is very real, So what I usually answer this with a joke. It's an old Ukrainian joke. So a boy and his girlfriend are walking through the forest back to their village at night. And the girl starts asking questions. What will you do if, I don't know, if a wolf jumps out? And he says, I don't know, I'm gonna try to beat him with a stick. And what will you do if this jumps out or that jumps out? And then she asks, what will you do if a bear jumps out? And he says, well, then I'll run. And she's like, oh, you idiot, you can't outrun the bear. And he says, I don't need to outrun the bear, I just need to outrun you. And I believe this is my philosophy in terms of artificial intelligence in general. You don't need to outrun the bear. You just need to be better than the best doctor that is available. So, for example, 85% in Switzerland is probably too little, because Switzerland probably has plenty of doctors that will have a better success rate. Remember, no doctor will have a 100% success rate. They also make mistakes. So until your AI is better than the doctor that is available, you shouldn't apply it. But the second it becomes better. So for example, in Africa, right, I believe there is not an abundance of neuroscientists in more poorer regions. So if you bring this machine there, you will save an enormous amount of lives instantly, because you will outrun the bear. So generally, this is my philosophy. I don't need to. I don't need to have 100% accurate AI. I just need to be more accurate than the best human that is available at the moment.
In that specific, let's say, territory. Let's say.
Well, yes, presumably, probably you can measure. You can make an assessment, right? Because probably if you're from Switzerland and there is no doctor on site in Switzerland, you can probably travel to France and it will not be a problem. If we are talking about Alzheimer's, right? It's not going anywhere. You have a week to travel to France, but maybe you're having some urgent issue where you have minutes to make a decision and you don't have an expert on site, then AI will be better, even if it is worse than an average human, right? And the alternative, on the other hand, because the advantage of AI is you only need one computer for the whole country, and you just send the data from all around the place. And I don't know, you find a guy on the hill and there's nobody around to take the data. So you just write down his symptoms and you get a response back. It might not be the best, but it's the only one you've got at the moment. So this is an example. But alternatively, until it is better than actually every doctor available, obviously you shouldn't implement it unsupervised.
Please, Christiana.
Yeah, if I may make a comment here, and perhaps one of you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, So the accuracy of the AI is given. So okay, the AI can, for example, overdiagnose or underdiagnose the cases of Alzheimer's, for example. So that's why the accuracy is low. And I think you can implement an algorithm that tends to overdiagnose, and then it basically just flags potential cases that then get reviewed by a human specialist. So you don't have the AI just making the decision and then the doctor just stamps it. It's more like it reduces the workload, and then there's this collaboration between the practitioner and the algorithm.
Yes, this is actually exactly the thing we used to do when we were starting, where when we, when people turn to us, most of the people who come to us are just having relationship issues or anxiety attacks, but some of them are genuinely suicidal, and we identify them and we send them to a professional, right? So basically, you just pick people who are more likely to be in danger and send them to a separate model or to a human, to high intention, blah, blah, blah. This is actually generally not only not only a solution, but it is generally a standard in medical AI. So generally, this is what, yes, this is very smart, and this is what people usually would do. So when I hear 85%, I usually assume that 85% is the overshot strategy. So where you overdiagnose and then a person.
Okay, I'm just having a curiosity. You said you identified the suicidals, and you refer them to somebody that can.
We used to have psychologists on the line, but people didn't really like that. They didn't like that a person was joining the dialogue, so instead we just have a system that will tell you that here are the hotlines, please reach out to them, because we are not a replacement for for a suicide hotline.
My question was, how did you do it?
How did we do it?
Yes.
So our first system was actually very simple. We had scripts that this amazing story. So we are releasing our AI, and it was supposed to be partially autonomous. So, well, like I said, it will speak automatically, and it will identify the people who are in danger, and it will refer them to our psychologist. But then the night before the release, our CEO writes to us and says, okay, we need this system now. And I'm like, great. So I open the data sets. I have, in one night, I read through 500 suicide notes and another 1,000 suicide posts, where people post on their suicide note on social media. And I identify code words that indicate self-harm and suicidal thought. And it's like, it's very cool. So for example, something unusual you wouldn't expect is a thank you. You know why? Because people will not thank AI. They don't feel the need to. People very rarely say thank you to AI, unless they say thank you for all you've done to me, but it's not gonna help me, but it's too late. And this is an example of overshot, right? Because people rarely do it, but they can say thank you, just, we help them and they go, thank you, right? But we still refer them to a professional anyway, because we prefer to overshot than to undershoot. We have since upgraded our system to a more advanced one, but it's a whole other can of worms. So right now we are using a multimodal AI, which is we do not just classify people as in danger and not in danger. Instead, we classify them on subclasses, which is probably also the future of medicine diagnostics, where you don't just say this person has Parkinson or doesn't have Parkinson. Instead, you say this person has this and this and this, and together you say this looks like Parkinson, right? So we are looking for a bunch of separate stuff like indications of self-harm, history of abuse, drug addictions, and etc. And if we notice this stuff, we refer you to a psychologist. Although some people choose not to go, again, because most of our user base have had a very negative experience with a psychologist previously, and they need a lot of time to let our model persuade them to actually turn back to, to therapy.
Okay, that's impressive because I knew that they are using artificial intelligence to detect depression, for example, by counting some pattern of words, some numbers of words that are appearing in the speech of depressive patient. But for suicidal, it's kind of difficult because you cannot make a very good difference. This was the problem back then. You cannot make a very good difference between them.
Yes, which is why we choose to overshoot. So
Yeah.
this is one of the examples where we overshoot.
Yeah.
And actually, ironically enough, out of 10 people who wrote to us that we saved their lives, 7 have said that we specifically saved their lives by persuading them to go to therapy when they were suicidal.
Okay. Good. How, because you are in the front line, you are in the battlefield with, I mean,
well, I'm also on the front line, not metaphorically, but okay.
You are also on the front line,
well,
but
I'm in
also
right now,
in our front line, in our front. I hope you will be okay, and I hope this is ending soon, because it's too much for everybody, mostly for you. But how do you think it will change? Because you are right there. You are changing therapy. How do you think therapeutic services will change in the near future, meaning the next 10 years?
So what I'm thinking is there'll probably be quite a bit of therapy left, where actual therapy, as in medicine, right? So not I had a fight with my girlfriend and I don't know how to resolve it, but I have a strong desire to hurt somebody and I don't know what to do about it. This sort of therapy. And I believe this sort of therapy will not be going away soon. And the reason for it is the same, why I don't think there will be any diagnostic done singularly by AI soon. Because a lot of people just distrust AI and it's not going away in the next 10 years. So I believe it will be literally blocked by legislation in one way or another. But what you will see is a complete or very huge automatization of general mental health services, like, just regular psychology, this sort of thing. And the way they will be automatized will probably look a lot like, futuristic, where you put your VR on your VR headset and you talk to an artificially generated psychologist, which I don't think will look realistic. I think it will look intentionally painted, like computer games. And the reason for that is because psychology actually requires a lot of human contact. But what our research has shown is that you can simulate it. It doesn't have to be 100% natural. It is enough for it to be simulated. So here's an example. When there was a COVID pandemic at large, a lot of people turn to online therapy, and they would have, online calls with their therapist. Well, newsflash, you don't even need to wait 10 years, probably 3 to 5. In 3 to 5 years, you will not be able to tell the difference between an artificially generated person talking to you from the screen and the real person. You will not be able to. A professional will probably succeed, but unless you're looking really hard, you will not tell the difference. So I believe this is the future where a big chunk of basic psychology and mental health services is completely automated. And by that, I mean, you actually will be going to have discussions with AI, and you will struggle to see the difference between an AI and a psychologist.
Do you think, because we didn't talk about so much, you said there will be not a clear picture of the therapist, it will be something more like a video game, and you said that you can recreate it. You can recreate the therapeutic touch.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that? It's important. It's incredibly important. This it's amazingly important.
Mm-hmm. So I say I assume it will not be 100% realistic, because I assume we would want to avoid uncanny valley. So when it's not a real human, but it looks very real, too real, it starts to become threatening. So I assume we would want to avoid that. So and also a lot of people actually find comfort. Again, there will be some people who will be who will not like the idea of talking to something that's not actually alive, who will care about it too much. And so the industry of psychology will not die. There will be a lot of such people. But many people will find it the other way around. Many people will find that the AI that will not tell anybody your secrets, that will not judge you, and that will always be on your side and is trained to only be on your side, they will find it way more approachable. So, but also to keep this allure of something that is approachable and not 100% real, I believe the best solution would be to keep the image of the psychologist also not 100% real. So they will have to be able to, to move their face, to show emotion, to change patterns of voice to indicate empathy, but the image itself will probably have to be mildly less realistic.
I will need studies on that. You said that you saw some studies on this.
On what exactly?
On why you should be not 100% realistic, and why is that? And
well, it's just the uncanny valley effect.
Sorry?
That's all. Uncanny valley.
Okay, we will. I think it's going to be interesting to see it, to read it. So please send it to us when you have time. But
sure.
I will get back to Stephen for the last question from my part. My colleagues are here; they can answer. They can ask you questions. What do you think it will be the future from your point of view with this integration of AI and medical services, Stephen? From your perspective.
Yeah, I think more important than having the best accurate and efficient tool, I think it's really important to have an ethical way of framing all this technology, right? Because then we can lose touch with ourselves, right? And once we do that, anything goes. So I think it's important to develop very good technology that are accurate, that are efficient. But I also think, for example, that we cannot make this technology mandatory for everyone. I think, for example, at least in the first years, in the first 50 years, for example, we should do at least create this public policy of making so people with can have the capacity to choose if they want to have a more artificial medicine instead of a more human medicine. I think this is a good way of making people also responsible for their actions, right? Because they can choose if they want to be treated by an AI medicine or traditional medicine. And this can also help to solve a few of the ethical problems, because the person will be then also co-responsible for whatever happens after. But I think it's important to, for example, for Michael, I'm not sure how to pronounce
Misha.
it.
Just call me Misha. Yeah.
For example, to have a consulting ethicist in your business, for example, I think that's very important, not just for marketing reasons, which is one of the best reasons you can have right now. A lot of big enterprises want ethicists just because they want to advertise that their businesses is so ethical, right? But actually, I'm talking about doing real applied ethics, specifically about your businesses. For example, I was invited by a company to do this ethical analysis of a very specific technological tool that they want to develop. And of course, any specific technology will need a specific ethical analysis. So you cannot just do general ethics and you apply it to all the technology and that's it. There will be nuances that need to be thought. And my advice would be that a lot of people from the business marketing side, they see ethicists as a caveat for their own work instead of positive input. But I think we can do both, right? You can create a very good, even lucrative and useful technology, but you can also do it via ethical standards. And that will be my main comment. I think ethics should be central to any kind of development.
Okay, we have because what I'm saying, Stephen, it's for me, it's like let's say recall to let's go back to basics. Let's go back to the principle. Let's go back to the pillars. Let's go back to what ethics should do in AI. And it's important. And the question from Ioana Payu is how will AI will keep the confidentiality information while it needs to self-improve. It's exactly what you said, and maybe Misha can have a glimpse of that.
Well, there are three ways to go about it. Way number one, simple classical medicine. If you are an actual medical product, this is what you will probably do, is you will show a disclaimer and ask people to sign up for research, right? And if a person doesn't sign up, then their data just, doesn't go anywhere. Then the data doesn't go anywhere. And if they sign up for research, then their data will be used to improve the AI. And the good news is, actually, people don't hesitate as much to sign up for AI research as you would expect, even for mental health. We ran it back in the days where we did research and we needed direct access to people's dialogues. We had more than half of participants agree to, half of regular users agree to provide data to improve the AI, which if you ever did a psychological study, that has never happened before, probably. The second is automatic anonymization. You can also use AI to redact all the information that can be used which is something we also do, to de-anonymize you. So we would redact dates, places, names, anything of this sort that can be used to actually dox you from the data before using it for anything. And the third one, if AI uses your data to self-improve, that means nobody's actually getting your data. The only seeing this data is AI that sees it already anyway. And then it uses it to self-improve and it doesn't need it anymore. At least if that's what we are talking about self-improvement. Then there is no problem because the only thing that sees your data is AI that you have given your data to already. Does this answer the question? I'm not sure.
I think it is.
Okay.
This is getting back also to the roots. Who is having access? And yeah, what's the intent? This is the most important. And yeah, good. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your presence. It was amazingly important for us to have your vision on the IE. Stephen having a background in ethics and philosophy. Misha actually having a hands-on experience, and that was good for us. Also, you have in the chat, you have in the webinar chat, you have the study Misha was kind enough to send us. And the second is a Google Doc, a survey that we need from you, from your part. We need your opinion. We need to know for the future, what should we do? And we need to understand your opinion about this event. And we will be incredibly grateful to you if you will do it. So if there are not questions anymore from our hosts or attendees, I would like to thank again to both guests, and maybe the next year will be in presence, so we can invite you here. As I told to George Nordhoff, maybe we can have time to visit Dracula's castle. So yeah, why not? See you guys. Thank you again. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
all. Bye bye. Thank you.